How many staff members do you have in your office? Not in the group. Your office.
In my staff, in my office, only one receptionist, and I use a typist. That's not permanently in my service. We, as a group, use the typist.
So how many are you in the office? You are 3. It's you, the PA, and the typist.
Yes, the receptionist and the typist.
In your office?
Yes.
And then how many are black people?
The receptionist is a black woman.
Have you ever visited a township?
Yes.
Where?
When I was in Bophuthatswana, on many occasions we had to go into the townships.
Where? In which township? In
Garankuwa, Winterveld.
Can you speak any indigenous?
Mabopane?
Can you speak any indigenous language?
No.
Why?
I cannot give a reason for that.
I can't hear Chief
I
Justice.
cannot give you a reason why I cannot speak.
Yeah, have you ever seen any need to learn indigenous languages?
Yes, I think it's a need to it will be a good thing to speak an African language.
But you still didn't see any need to learn it when you think it's a good thing to know?
No, I did not.
You didn't see any need to learn African language?
No, sir.
Do judges have a role to play when it comes to transformation?
Yes.
What role will you play to transform society as a judge?
Well, sir, maybe to give you an example, I've attached a letter or email to my application form where a black woman appeared in my court in an opposed matter, and she appeared in person. And I've guided her right through the proceedings. And at the end of the day, I ruled in her favor. She wrote a comment to the judge president.
Do you support transformation?
Definitely, yes.
How does your appointment help us to transform the judiciary?
So, as I've already said, I'm in favor of transformation, as you, but I cannot say how my appointment will help transformation.
You support transformation, therefore yes. You can't be subjective. In supporting transformation, you ought to tell us now, how does appointing you help to transform the judiciary, since you are a supporter of transformation?
No, sir, I don't know.
It doesn't help us, right?
No.
Appointing you doesn't help us to transform the judiciary, am I right?
Yes.
Thank you.
We need a borderless continent. We need a continent with one currency. We need a continent with one parliament, which has got teeth and it will bite and hold the executives in countries accountable. And ultimately, we need one African president. We need United States of Africa. We supported and we continue to support those ideals of brother leader Gaddafi. We are following in the footsteps of those leaders. We are not saying they were perfect, some of them, but there are a lot of teachings that come from our leaders in the continent which we can follow because we think they will unite us. This thing was the one thing called Africa. This was one thing. It was divided by colonizers. This borders are artificial borders imposed on us by colonizers. Why do you want to behave like you are owning colonizers' properties? These borders are colonizers' properties, they are not ours. Let us go back to African unity. We want one voice, one Africa. We must stop doing away with African hate, which was instilled in us by the colonizers. When you say, hey, there are too many Zimbabweans here, there are too many Nigerians here, hey, you are doing the work of the devil, which is to divide Africans. Be angry with Nigerians and South Africans for doing crimes, Zimbabweans, the same way you are with South Africans who commit crimes. They must be treated the same. It must not be because it's a Nigerian, it's a more crime. If a Nigerian kills a person, that killing is twice. As if the murder by South African is lesser than a Nigerian murder. It's wrong. Crime is crime. Let's deal with it as crime. When it is a white person in South Africa, undocumented, he's called an investor. Not only a white person, including Indians and Chinese. These Guptas didn't have proper papers here. These Guptas didn't have proper papers. No one dared called them Kwerekweres. No one. But if it was my African brothers, we're going to be called Kwerekweres because they don't have papers. Self-hate. It must come to an end. If it means making the EFF lose votes for that, let it lose votes. Lose votes on principle. Not on political expediency of wanting to appeal. This country belongs to Africans in the same way Nigeria belongs to South Africans. Nigeria is South Africa. South Africa is Nigeria. We are Zimbabweans. We need to do away with this nonsensical idea that was imposed on us by colonizers, by Theresa May ancestors, that we must dislike each other. We must do away with that. Theresa May is coming here to make sure that we continue to hate each other. Look at what we are doing now. We are reclaiming our land in South Africa, saying our people must get the land inspired by our brothers in Zimbabwe. Namibia is following. Let the whole of African continent follow and reclaim our land. That's how we are going to gain our independence. And through the ownership of the continental land, we shall then have a true one South Africa. We are unable to unite because we are divided along colonial lines, Francophones and Anglophones. We need to do away with that. We need to love our African brothers in America when they are being slaughtered, in London when they are being slaughtered. They need to know that we love them here in South Africa. They remain our brothers. Love each other everywhere else where you find one another. Protect each other, Africans, because we are in the receiving end of capitalism. Capitalism inherently, it is racist. That's why it's targeting blacks everywhere else where blacks are found. So we need to do away with that. We need to and Commonwealth is actually one of the institutions that perpetuate African divisions. I mean, we still have judges in Kenya, in Zimbabwe, wearing blonde wigs. What is that? What is that? And including some scholars who are lawyers, they are wearing those things. They still wear those things and come and lecture us about decolonization, wearing a wig. Decolonizing Africa starts with simple things. Starts with doing away with apartheid colonial symbols and colonial way of doing things. We must, and even if it's not our generation, generations to come, we must have a language that unites Africans, like Swahili. If Swahili can be developed and it become a continental language, and then we do away with speaking to each other in English, because that's what colonizers did. Divided us, made sure that we don't have a common language to communicate amongst ourselves, and then we use their language to communicate so that they can hear everything we say. So we need to do away with that. If we want Africa, which will be an equal competitor with the West and America. So it is through small things that will realize a total freedom of Africa, not only South Africa. I was very worried with those judges in Zimbabwe. Even our judges here, they wear those green things. I don't know what do these things represent. What is that? What symbol is that? Does it mean when you're wearing this thing, you can only think when you're wearing a wig that looks like the hair of white people? You're actually wearing white brains. The reason you think properly is that wig, according to colonialism. And then revolutionaries like ZANU-PF allows that to continue in Zimbabwe. They allow that to continue in Kenya. Well, Kenya, of course, is something different. I don't think there is a total independence there. America has got a huge interest in that affair, in that arrangement of Kenya. But everywhere else in the continent, we need to start doing away with those things. And pulling out of Commonwealth is one of the things we need to do to realize a complete sovereignty for South Africa. We must not be scared to say that. We must be hated. It might not happen now, but that is what we're envisaging for the future of South Africa. It might not be realized in our lifetime, but those who are coming after us should know what we stood for. We were anti-colonial, anti-imperialist, and therefore anything that represented imperialism and colonialism we reject. In the same way we reject Trump, in the same way we reject Theresa May, we reject everything that represented. When we said roads must fall, we meant exactly that we need to do away with symbols that represent colonialism. As we speak now, the EFF doesn't participate in the Commonwealth Parliament Forum. We don't. The EFF refuses to participate in multinational organizations that have got close links and relations with imperialism. We refuse. We don't. We don't do that. And our going to London, talking to business people in London, talking to business people in America, everywhere else, is not talking to imperialism. It's talking to individual potential investors. The same thing we can do in Nigeria. The same thing we can do in Kenya. Strengthen African Union. We need to strengthen African Parliament. We need to strengthen African judicial system. We need to trial tyrants here in Africa. We need to trial and jail dictators here in Africa through our own African judicial system. We can do it. We don't need imperialists to come and tell us how we can conduct our affairs in this continent. For that we shall be hated. But let us be killed and hated for what we stand for. We must not be scared to die for the things that we stand for. That's what we represent. That's what we stand for. And not being scared to die. I saw a Muruti that Kenneth Mishwe say, Malema is always surrendered by bodyguards and all that. Not being scared to die doesn't mean you must live a reckless life. Because any leader that lives a reckless life and doesn't protect himself, that leader will compromise the revolution. We need to protect our leadership. But if death comes, Malema must not ask for forgiveness. Malema must tell them, kill me, dog. That's what we are here to do. Kill me. Kill me for what I represent. Those should be the last words when you die as a revolutionary. Die with your boots on. Die not apologizing. Because the enemy one day will tell the story of your life and they will say these were the last words. The last words of a revolutionary must inspire generations to come to continue the fight for a total economic emancipation of the African continent. Thank you very much.
Well, what we say in the EFF, exactly what I said here, is that the state must be the custodian of the land. Why? Because you are refusing to release the land. Black people will never own the land. They don't have money. They will never have money because the ownership of the land is the one that results in you having the money. So the struggle has always been about property ownership. It was never about driven in 1 million BMW. It was never about driven with bodyguards. It was about the property ownership. So we need the state to then say, all of this land, including Malema's house, everyone else, this land belongs to the state. And then it shall be allocated back to the same person. If it's residential under so and so. If it's an office park, it's office park under so and so. We lease it back to you as the state. As long as a purpose is clearly defined on what that piece of land is used for. Once you have done that, you must see how much pieces of land we are going to remain with. Because there's too much land out there. Then that which remains then gets to be allocated for those who have been looking for land but cannot afford to get that piece of land. When I was coming here, I got a call from a young lady who says, I've got the money. I want to do a chicken farm. And there's no piece of land. I cannot afford to buy a piece of land. But if allocated a piece of land, then I can invest in that piece of land and do a chicken farm. So there will never be a chicken farm because there's no piece of land. And when you look for a piece of land, it's extremely expensive. Let every piece of land be occupied and the purpose be clearly defined. What are you using this land for? Now people say, if you take the land, the investors will go. Why would investor go in a country where they say to you, you want to open an industry? Here is a piece of land. You can occupy it for 50 years. You don't have to pay us anything. We are going to give you water at a reasonable rate. We are going to give you electricity at a reasonable rate as long as you employ our people, as long as you contribute to the economic growth. And most of the things you use in this factory, they must be produced here. So why would an investor not grab such, especially foreign investors, such an opportunity? So the land will be guaranteed because when you want to build a factory, you bring the money, you build the factory, we bring the land. That's what makes us partners.